Think of a word, a positive word, and it may just be a chronicle shared in this space. Let's make life more meaningful. For God so loved the world, that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. Love is the ultimate sacrifice. Welcome to the Gems, joining in for a listen to this episode on love. Hope you've been having a love-filled experience, with my message, or just loved listening to my voice. Suffice to say, we are all back in this space of meaning, and without further ado, let's get into today's episode. Chronicles with Stephie, episode 7, Love Chronicles. Hi everybody, I hope you have been, just feeling love and feeling loved and feeling to give love, in every aspect of your being in this time. I hope that, the life you are currently curating for yourself with meaning, of course, has just been on a more positive wave this go around. You've entered into a new day. We're in a new month. Hello, October. Coming to the end of a week. Today is Thursday. But, rest assured, I just hope I hope love has been your foundation. Because love is the foundation of life. So I hope that this experience that you are currently in has just been filled with love. And if it's not been so positive, I hope that, at the end of this podcast episode, it would resonate somewhat to just reintroduce, a semblance of love for you and, anyone around you. So, love. What do we all know about love? Love covers a multitude of sin. That's one. It is the foundation of life itself, as I said before. Christ had to die for us as God's children. And that is no easy sacrifice. That is absolutely no easy sacrifice. It's no easy decision, because love is beyond human understanding. Such greater sacrifice is really beyond human understanding. That's why we don't hold the power of life and death. That's why we didn't sacrifice, our ultimate Son for the greater good of the entire world. It is beyond human understanding. If we are to choose life versus death, we'd always choose life. Because love is something that you do. It's not an act. It's not a facade. It requires constant motion, constant movement, of oneself or an experience. Because that's life. Life is the roller coaster journey. It's up, it's down, it's in between. You have the peaks, you have the lows, you have the mountains, you have the valleys. So it's ever changing. But yet it remains a constant. How ironic is that? It's ever changing, but it remains constant. It is that constant. And if we're being truthful and honest, how many of us have loved, truly loved someone, loved something, an experience, a song, food? If you're like me, I'm a foodie, I love food. But just truly loved. Love is without judgment, and I repeat, love is without judgment. It is unconditional. I don't care what anybody has to say about that. And even if you play in your ego and you think it's not, love is unconditional. Right? Your ego is not. Your ego sometimes will get the better of you, though, to think that love is, but it's not. The ego is what it is. And oftentimes we'll confuse ego with love. But that's for another episode, so let's not even... because I can go on a whole rant about ego. I can talk about you sitting in your ego, sitting in yourself, rather than being outside of yourself. And I think I said this in a previous episode. It was a movie that And there's several movies that depict this sort of analogy and metaphor, where your consciousness, your subconscious pops out of your body and you're looking at yourself, right? So just imagine you giving yourself the opportunity to just remove your subconscious, your being, that which enables you and makes you to be who you are, uplifts your character, gives you meaning and purpose. Imagine if you're supposed to remove that element, to just look on the vessel, to just look on the frame that's there, which is your body, to just look there. Would you really be pleased, to know that you're living in your ego, you're judgmental, you're unkind, you're not loving as you should? The Bible tells you that you should love your neighbor as yourself. You're not loving others as you should, but rather you're staying in your ego. Love shouldn't prevent, that from happening. Your ego prevents. Love doesn't prevent. Love presents. Love presents. And it should never be confused with your ego, because love is that tenet that you do something because of, right? No, you do it not because of, you do it in spite of. Because if I use the word because, I'd always be justifying it. But in spite of this, yeah. So in spite of this, that she, the old lady, love is unconditional. It will always be there. So no matter what the outcome is, no matter what's going to happen, like I said, love is the foundation of life. It is that which is unconditional. Love can also be a drug. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Love can also be a drug, filling just, every crevice and the corner of your soul. Love can be a drug. It can be excruciatingly difficult to articulate. I will not lie to you. Because this topic within and of itself is so expansive. It's not as liberal as we'd like it to be. Even though society sometimes dictates it to be in this cookie cutter way, it dictates love. No. So it can be excruciatingly difficult to articulate and experience. But yet at the same time, we can't do or live without it. It's a drug, I'm telling you. It's addictive. Love is incomparable, and without fail, it really does always remain the foundation of life. No matter if it feels addictive, no matter if it's not addictive, no matter if you've loved or have never loved, unfortunately, it lays the foundation of life. So what then is love? That was almost like an introduction. What then is love? You're like, Stephie, really? Like, haven't you been explaining it? Have I though? I hope I have. I hope, that was able to sink in and resonate somewhat. But what really is love? I mean, by now, the definition should not have eluded you, because I've tried to explain it as best I know. But failing that, let's get into a definition, which is something I haven't done in the last couple of episodes. I've not been able to define love for you, gems. So let's lay the foundation of today's podcast. Love is a deep and tender feeling of affection for, or attachment or devotion to a person or a cause. That's non-verbatim from the Collins Dictionary. Another definition we can find from, say, the Oxford Dictionary. It's a very strong feeling of liking and caring for someone or something. I think I prefer the first definition first. The first definition first. But I think I prefer that one. It's a deep and tender feeling of affection for, or attachment or devotion to a person or a cause. I like that one. With devotion, it means, should I use the word indebted? With devotion is such a sense of, devotion is a sense of, devotion is a sense of loyalty. I think I'll use the word loyalty. Devotion is a sense of loyalty. It's a sense of being, if that makes sense. You are focused on achieving or experiencing a particular cause. And in this case, the cause is love. Love is fleeting, but love is all conquering. Love is all knowing. And the only being that's, all conquering and all knowing is God. So, God is love. And that's where love actually commences. The gift of life was birthed from love because he loved his son so much. He gave the ultimate sacrifice. And growing up, I think the definition really has, for me personally, not been straightforward, which again, I guess that's not what love is. But for me, growing up, I found it to be very difficult to liken onto myself, the experience of other people, because I thought the only persons you were supposed to love were family. And then when I was introduced to my emotions, and I have to say the word introduced to my emotions because as a child, the only thing I knew about, especially as a baby, was eating and sleeping. So when I was introduced to my emotions and I learned what happiness and sadness and joy and peace and, anger and etc. was, when I learned about all those things, I realized that those emotions help not only to develop my character, but help to develop my understanding of love and how to love and how to give love. So when it is that I learned to love outside of my family, I found it to be very difficult because, human beings are not related to me, through blood. You're more so related to me through the Spirit, through Christ. And it's not until I started going to church, of course, and, had a deeper understanding with my relationship with God and, who God was and that God was for everybody. That's the only reason to this day, I think, I am able to experience other human beings. I'm able to see beyond what's in front of me, what they put out. I'm able to have a deeper connection, and it resonates better for me because I'm not a superficial individual. I'm a deep-rooted individual. I go beyond what I can see because for me, and this is where the unconditional comes in for me personally, I always like to know the why. What's the makeup behind another human being? How is their spirit? How is their soul traversing through this earthly experience? That's how I see people. And that's why it's very easy for me to give grace. That's why it's easy for me to truly and unconditionally love every human being. In spite of, and I said this earlier, not because of, but in spite of, what they or what we may perceive as each other's shortcomings, I am able to love beyond the flesh. Like I said, it's deeper than human understanding. Because if I were not supposed to let up for every ill that I've experienced from another human being, I'm being very honest, I don't think I'd love them. I don't think I'd love them, honestly. I don't, and I'm being honest, and I think a lot of persons can agree with that. And that's why it's so important to be intentional with the life that you are creating, the life that you are enacting on other persons, and it should come with meaning. And I'm just so in love with this podcast, and I'm in love with being inspired by the messages that God instills in me, and of course by the earthly lessons that I partake in, because it helps me to really curate this podcast to be more meaningful. That's why I choose to use the positive words, right? I don't play naive. I am not a naive individual. But I think too much quote-unquote ugliness is out in the world that I am going to always, above all else, choose love to be the foundation of my life. And the Bible tells you in 1 Corinthians 16 verse 13, it says, let all that you do be in love. Let all that you do be in love. All that you do. Not because of, but in spite of. It should be done in love. Right? Greater love has no one, than somebody who will give us service of themselves to other persons. Greater love does not exist, to give up service of yourself, because remember, we don't serve selves. We serve God. We serve His purpose, His kingdom, and we make it our own. That's what we distribute among the world, and we should do it with a semblance of love. No, love not easy. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of this podcast. I'm so sorry, this might be a long episode, but love not easy. I don't care how we put it, love is not easy. It's not an easy thing to do, especially if we have unhealed trauma, especially if we live in our ego, especially if we're far from God, especially if we don't have an ounce of it to give because we didn't learn it or we didn't receive it properly. Love is not something that's easy to do. It's very fleeting, even though it shouldn't be, but it's very fleeting. It comes and it goes, right? And that's why it's so important to solidify that foundation in Christ, to understand that it is unconditional. But again, it's not easy. It's not easy to love somebody who's wronged you. It's not easy to love somebody who has hurt you. It's not easy to love somebody who has cheated on you. It's not easy to love somebody who has told a lie on you. It's not easy to love somebody who has robbed you of an experience, robbed you of an intimate moment, robbed you of an achievement, robbed you of so many things. It's not easy. And this world that we're living in today, for being all the way honest, it makes it very difficult to love other persons because of the human nature about us. The human nature to not do what's right. My grandma used to always have this saying, if the thing is wrong, don't do it. She couldn't be more right. It's easy for us to be caught up in flesh. It's easy for us to be caught up in self. It's easy for us to be caught up in keeping up with the Joneses, because that's essentially what society pushes on us on a daily basis. And then you ask yourself, how can 1 Corinthians 16 verse 14, how can everything that I do be done in love if this is the ugliness of the world? And it's easy to become trapped in it. I will not lie to you, it's easy to fall off a shape. You love exercising, you love eating healthily, right? You love your affirmations, you love listening to this podcast, but seeing or hearing, even so much as a whisper or utterance of something that is negative, something that does not minister to your soul in a positive way, it's easy for you to get off track. It's easy for you to stop doing what you love, especially if you've been hurt. And not only hurt by someone, but by the things that, you are seeing, hearing, listening to. It's very easy to fall off track. And the hardest part is always getting up. But understand, once you drop, once you fall down, boof, badang, on the ground, you have to get back up. There's no staying down. There is no staying down. And it might be such a difficult task, but even if you don't love nobody else, you love yourself. Even if you don't know how to love yourself, try to find that mustard seed deep within you, because it's planted. Try to find it and uproot it and bring it to the forefront. Bring it from out of the earth, out of the ground, so that it can spring and flourish. And I tell you, it's not easy. And they tell you, love is patient, love is kind, it doesn't envy or boast, it's not arrogant and rude. True. But how do you deal with persons who are impatient, who are unkind, who do envy, who do boast, who are arrogant, who are rude, disrespectful? How do you do that? That's a question I would love even somebody to answer, even in the comments. How do you do that? How do you love individuals as you love yourself? Especially if you don't know how to love yourself. How do you do that? And I think the only answer, as I'm hearing it now within my spirit, is to love God. You have to love God. It starts with the Creator. It starts with Him. There's no two ways about it. When everything else and all else fails, one thing for certain, two things for sure, God will not. So I think I want to recant. Love is the foundation of life. Yeah, God is also the foundation of life, which leads to love. God is the foundation of life, which leads us to love. I think that's what I actually want to say. God is the foundation of life, who then leads us to love. I'm not pausing for a dramatic effect. I'm just pausing because it was just revealed to me in my spirit, and I'm just in a state of stillness at the moment. I'm in a state of stillness because if I think about all the good and the great and excellent things that the Lord has done, I know it's because He done it out of love. and know that He's done it because of the special relationship that I have with Him and so many of us have with Him. And I have to say so many of us because it's the love of others, through their prayers and sacrifices for us as strangers to each other that continues to carry us through. And sometimes we don't even realize it. And that's a sacrifice, for persons to be able to hold space for other persons, to give grace to other persons, to love other persons, to sacrifice for other persons who they don't know. And whether you think it or not, you do it daily. You do it daily. You do it daily through your work, whatever your work or your job or your career may be. You do it daily with the tasks that you partake in. You do it daily. You do it daily even sometimes without thinking about it. Small gestures that you may not think is a gesture of love. It actually is. Because remember, love, it doesn't boast. It's not arrogant or rude. Imagine if love itself was impatient. Imagine if love said, I'm not going to wait for you today, because you don't love me. So I'm not going to wait for you. Imagine if love was your motor car or the motor vehicle that helps you to transport from point A to point B. And imagine now you've been 5 minutes late and love is like, we're not gonna start today now. Sorry. Imagine if love was your car. We're not gonna start today. Imagine if love was the bus. Well, I'm not waiting on you, Imagine if that was love. Imagine if that was love. Imagine if you offered somebody, your food. So imagine if the food was love and you offered it to somebody, you don't even hear a thank you. I bet you say you wouldn't share it ever again. You wouldn't share love ever again because them never say thanks. But remember, and you really should start looking on it like that. Start looking on it like that, Start replace the things that you love. Replace the experiences that you're currently going through with just the word love. Try it. And see whether or not you'd be patient. See whether or not you'd be kind. See whether or not you'd be boastful, jealous, arrogant, rude, disrespectful. Replace it with love. Whatever you're doing, replace it with love. And see what the outcome would be. So like I said, love covers a multitude of sin. Love is sacrificial. Love is life. Love is life. Thank you for listening to today's rant. Because I'm thinking about it now. Did this podcast have a structure? I don't think it did. I think I just came here to rant. And I don't necessarily know if that was a good or a bad thing. I know some things you could be relating to, but some things you can't. And I guess you're probably asking, okay, what was the point of this episode, Stephie? I didn't learn anything. You didn't teach me anything. And I'm so sorry. If that were the case, I'm really, really so sorry. But the point is, God is love. God lays the foundation for our life, who then in turn leads us to love. And all that we do should be done in love. Yes? It's sacrificial and it's unconditional. It's not because of anything that we may or may not do, may or may not partake in, may or may not experience. It's in spite of all those things. In spite of who we are as individuals traversing this life, in spite of our shortcomings or failures, in spite of our future selves. Love is in spite of. Right? And just remember, for God so loved the world, He gave His only Son, His only child. So it's time we should believe in Him so that we won't perish but rather have eternal life. And if anything you don't remember this. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Peace and love and light. And I will see you all in the next episode. Bye everyone.